Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, for months, social media companies, including Facebook, have been playing down concerns over fake news, and specifically about the role it may have played in last year's American election. But earlier today, Facebook changed its tune, releasing a statement saying the company now believe Russians working for a company linked to the Kremlin, the Internet Research Agency, operatives posted roughly 80,000 pieces of divisive, inflammatory content between January 2015 and August 2017 that reached as many as 126 million Americans. That's almost half of all Americans who are old enough to be allowed a Facebook profile. The Russian agents also uploaded more than 1,000 videos of Google's YouTube service and bombarded Twitter. None of these companies has ever revealed the extent of Russian meddling before, but tonight, representatives for the three companies were being grilled by a congressional committee. Here's John Sweeney.
Twitter, Facebook and Google, on the hook, on the hill. Tonight, three tech megaliths were called to account in Washington, D.C. The charge against them, that they don't do enough to protect their platforms from being used by those who might want to warp American democracy.
I think you do enormous good, but your power sometimes scares me. Did China run ads in the last election cycle that tried to impact our election?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Not that you're aware of. Did Turkmenistan?
No, Senator, not that I'm aware of. We have.
How about North Korea?
The answer is Facebook doesn't know. After Trump's victory, Facebook boss Mark Zuckerberg rubbished the very idea that ads on his site had snow on their boots as fake news and crazy. That was then. Now Facebook says that Russian sources placed thousands of ads that reached 126 million American users. But fixing the problem needs humans, and they don't come cheap.
Facebook, you have algorithms that do the first run and humans that it kicks to a set of humans to look at it. And I understand that you've increased the number of humans who do look at these kind of things. Can you explain the process that you have?
With respect to the sort of what I'll call the sort of particularized threat actors that are typically associated with nation states, that's a highly manual process. So we will, for example, have a threat indicator that we're tracking, and then if we see activity, that's really a highly intensive manual effort.
This is the moment when Facebook, roughly worth $500 billion, Google $700 billion and Twitter around $15 billion, face much tougher scrutiny. But why are the tech giants in trouble?
I think if there's one great takeaway already from the Russian controversy in the US, is that it's really shone a light on the way social media companies operate. The use of dark ads, the use of bots, accounts who we don't know who's behind them. And finally all this is coming out. The way the Russians seem to have used Facebook and Twitter during the US election, it doesn't seem to be a bug in the system. It is the system. We're finally understanding just how, well, frankly, deeply manipulative these companies are, how they override all our ideas of how democracy and public space should function.
Did Russian agents buy this man's ticket to the White House? If so, is this hearing the start of a necessary revolution, bringing more scrutiny to the internet? Opinion is divided.
Companies do not give a lot of intelligence directly to U.S. investigators in a general basis. They have pledged to work more closely together in the future, but of course they don't want to set a precedent that could apply to them in other countries around the world with maybe harsher rules. It is always going to be a dance for these companies, not giving so much that their futures would be a lot more complicated.
It's a huge change. Finally, Silicon Valley has had to walk to the Hill, to Capitol Hill. This is a very, very big moment where it's almost as Silicon Valley and all its ethics are on trial. Again, the public awareness that will come out of this, and that it is coming out of this, about the way these platforms spread messages, influence us, is massively important, and will, I hope, have to change the essence of how they function.
But today's hearing and yesterday's charges against 3 men in Team Trump together harden the evidence that President Trump's election victory was, in part, made in Moscow.
John Sweeney, so where does all of this leave the technology firms, and could this increase calls for them to be subjected to more regulation? Thomas Ridd is Professor of Security Studies in the Department of War at King's College in London. He himself gave evidence earlier this year to a congressional committee on Russian influence over political campaigns. He joins us from Washington. Good evening to you. Can we deal with Facebook first? Are you surprised by the scale of what happened on Facebook, and how much do you think Facebook actually knew about what was going on?
In a way, I'm not surprised by the scale of what we've seen, but I think we're really past the point where we can talk about these companies in one sweep. Facebook and Twitter are really dealing with the problem in very different ways. The market is pushing Twitter towards hiding the problem. The market is pushing Facebook towards fixing the problem. And I think this is a really important thing to understand.
And in that case, then, is Twitter in more trouble than Facebook?
Absolutely. I think Twitter is in a lot more trouble than Facebook, but so far we haven't fully come to terms with how much automated abuse activity was happening on Twitter. Simply consider the following question. How many of the retweets and likes that, for example, the real Donald Trump account received during the election campaign were actually human as opposed to machine generated?
But what do you... Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no, the answer is we don't know. And really the unpleasant truth is that even Twitter may not fully have the answer to that question because they don't keep data that users are deleting.
So when you look at the kind of material that this internet research agency was pushing out there, you know, stuff on race, religion, gun rights, gay, transgender issues, will we ever actually really know the impact that had on voting intentions?
That is a very, very difficult thing to come to terms with, this question of what was the actual impact. But let's focus on what happened for a moment. Facebook has a very clear policy: one face, one name, and they want real names on the platform. Twitter has a different policy. Mm-hmm. On Twitter, it's okay to have anonymous accounts. It's okay to have many accounts at the same time. So Twitter, in some ways, is the perfect disinformation platform, because ultimately, think about this, Twitter is affording the same level of privacy protection to Russian botnets run by a foreign intelligence agency that they afford to 15-year-old teenagers writing and tweeting from their sofa at home under their real name.
Yeah, but on the question of Facebook, and we already know that Mark Zuckerberg denied all this for so long, we've now got a situation where Facebook can manage to make sure that a lot of the child molestation stuff doesn't reach it, a lot of the violent stuff doesn't reach the page. They keep saying they're just a conduit, but they are a publisher, and surely as a publisher, they are accepted to be moving in that direction. They're going to have to clean up their act and make sure that all this fake stuff doesn't actually go on the same page as some of the real stuff, or else they're going to be in much more trouble.
The publisher of information, the problem cuts even deeper than that. Right now, we're in a situation where Facebook, but even more so Twitter, publish information that shapes the news, shapes our democracy, shapes history. But because these companies take privacy protections seriously, we're also in a situation where users, including intelligence agencies from foreign countries, can actually remove content and retrospectively edit the news and edit the way we perceive our history.
Right.
That is a deep contradiction at the heart of an open liberal democracy, really, not just of social media.
Thomas Ridd, thank you very much for joining us.